Oh boy, NASCAR just dropped the biggest fine in its history to a single race team, to Denny Hamlin for what he said on a podcast, and you currently have more points in the NASCAR Cup Series than this Cup driver. But how? Why? NASCAR is getting criticism for these penalties, and we'll break it all down today on Shifting Gears. I'm Alan Bailey, and before Denny Hamlin can raid MJ's couch to pay for this one, make sure you smash the subscribe button to stay up to date on the latest videos, and make sure that you log on to AmericanRacingNetwork.com for the latest motorsports news. ARN, the Motorsports Authority. Whew, yeah, this is a big one, like a big one. NASCAR severely penalizing Hendrick Motorsports on Tuesday for issues with the hood louvers, or those hood scoops. They discovered all of this last weekend in Phoenix before practice on Friday. Interesting. NASCAR docked Alex Bowman, Kyle Larson, and William Byron 100 driver points and 10 driver playoff points each. NASCAR penalized each of the four Hendrick teams with 100 owner points and 10 owner playoff points as well. Plus, they suspended crew chiefs Cliff Daniels, Alan Gustafson, Rudy Fugle, and Blake Harris for 4 races each. NASCAR also fined the teams $100,000 each. That's $400,000 to Hendrick Motorsports, making it the biggest single fine in NASCAR history. Now, Bowman, Byron, and Larson were in the top 5 in points before all this. Bowman had been the points leader. Now they fall well outside the top 20 after losing those 100 points. Hendrick Motorsports said in a statement, quote, "We are disappointed with today's decision by NASCAR to issue the penalties and have elected to appeal based on a variety of facts," unquote. NASCAR did not penalize Josh Berry any points because he doesn't earn points in the Cup Series as an Xfinity driver. And Chase Elliott was not penalized because he was not driving the 9 car at the time the infractions were discovered. What makes this really interesting is that NASCAR confiscated the hood louvers, or air vents on the hood, from all 4 of these Hendrick cars after Friday's practice at Phoenix, but allowed the teams to actually run them in the practice session. It's almost like they got caught with their hand in their cookie jar, and NASCAR said, no, let's let them actually run the things. Obviously, it didn't affect performance because they were fast in the first practice, they got the pole, and they were fast in qualifying, and oh, by the way, they were fast in the race, and one of them won the race. Reportedly, Hendrick Motorsports modified these hood vents, and NASCAR has a very strict rule that single-source parts cannot be modified by the teams unless approved specifically by NASCAR. NASCAR Senior Vice President of Competition Elton Sawyer was asked if the modifications could impact downforce or performance. He said, quote, "We don't normally go into intent, but I think it's fair to say could be performance around these modifications," unquote. Could be? Did NASCAR just fine Hendrick Motorsports on a could be? Because clearly they were still fast, even with these hood scoops actually changed out with stock ones, quote unquote. Sawyer also went on to say that the area the hood louvers modified on Hendrick Motorsports, quote, "was not approved. We felt like the communication line between NASCAR and the garage was done properly, and obviously they were outside the boundaries," unquote. Interesting. Hendrick Motorsports did announce that they are going to appeal the penalties that NASCAR issued, saying, quote, "The organization has made the strategic decision not to request the deferral of personnel suspensions," unquote, meaning that they're going to go ahead and let the crew chief sit on the bench for 4 races, at least for now. So interim crew chief should be announced sometime either today or tomorrow before NASCAR heads to Atlanta this weekend for the Cup race. Hendrick Motorsports also stated that NASCAR identified the louvers on the 4 teams during a voluntary inspection 35 minutes before the opening of the garage on Friday at Phoenix. Hendrick Motorsports stating that, quote, "NASCAR took possession of the parts approximately 4 hours later with no prior communication. The situation had no bearing on Saturday's qualifying session or Sunday's Cup race," unquote. So essentially, Hendrick Motorsports is saying, well, it didn't affect any official level of competition. Practices don't give you points or have any real consequence on qualifying or the race other than a rough indication of what each team is probably going to be running. This is a very tricky and interesting situation, and my take is that Hendrick Motorsports, if in fact modified these parts to fit on the car better or be safer, then no, there should not be any fine whatsoever. But if they did in fact modify these parts for a performance advantage of any kind, even a minor one, then yes, they need to be fined immediately. This extensively, I don't know, but NASCAR needs to drop the hammer and prove to these Cup teams, even the biggest team in NASCAR, that is the quote-unquote super team Yankee team, then NASCAR needs to set a precedent and say, no, it is not okay to change these things. If there's an issue, you need to come to us. Now, this issue's come up in the past with Brad Keselowski's team, and guess what? They were fined. They saw an issue that could have been a safety issue, and they changed things without having NASCAR's approval. They were still fined, and oh, by the way, that became a rule. So if NASCAR within the next week or so announces that there's a new procedure regarding those louvers, then guess what? They owe every single point and dollar back to Hendrick Motorsports. Something tells me that Hendrick Motorsports is going to be fine. They kind of collect old crew chiefs and have them stick around the race shop doing other jobs within the company. So I think they have enough personnel to cover these 4 Cup teams. And since points don't matter, because frankly, you don't need to have a minimum point requirement in order to qualify for the playoffs, all the Hendrick Motorsport cars need to do is simply go out there and win a race, a situation that Chase Elliott is going to find himself in when he returns to the Cup Series. So really, the points mean absolutely nothing except for those 10 playoff points. Rick Hendrick would easily write a $500,000 check tomorrow if he got all those playoff points back. And trust me, he's probably offering that. What's interesting is that Denny Hamlin has been fined $50,000 and 25 driver points after admitting on his own podcast, Actions Detrimental, that he intentionally wrecked Ross Chastain during last Sunday's NASCAR Cup race at Phoenix. NASCAR punished Hamlin for behavior that includes attempting to manipulate the outcome of a race, wrecking another vehicle, and actions, quote, detrimental to stock car racing or NASCAR, unquote. Now, Hamlin Chastain, they crashed on the final lap during Sunday's Cup race. Hamlin said he intentionally forced Chastain into the wall as they raced for position behind the lead group. A lot of people were questioning whether or not he was going to actually appeal this decision, and Hamlin himself tweeted that night, quote, "I will not be making an appeal to NASCAR. However, I will be making an appeal to the people. I'll see you next Monday. Hashtag ADDH. For some reason, Denny Hamlin thinks that public opinion means more than NASCAR's opinion here, which, good for you. I'm sure your buddy MJ can cover this fine for you, and honestly, 25 driver points mean literally nothing, except Hamlin probably might not be able to win a race in 2023, so he might actually need some of those points back. Some people are going to turn this into a free speech debate, and that is not what this is. Instead, this is one driver using his race car as a weapon and intentionally manipulating the outcome of a race. NASCAR had a huge crackdown on this about 10 years ago, and frankly, those policies are still in play. Should Denny Hamlin have been penalized? Absolutely. Does this mean that the Hamlin-Chastain battle rivalry is over, or is this just gas on the fire? Well, Denny actually did say on his podcast that him and Ross did talk after the race, and they both said truce. Now, is that true? I don't know. Hamlin doesn't really have a reason to lie here, and I do believe Ross Chastain is completely over this, considering they were both running in the top 10 and both looked to get a top 10 out of this race before Hamlin did that. The question is what happens the next time these two find each other, because let's be honest, the 11 and the 1 seem to find each other every single week. They have an extensive history of getting into each other, more Ross getting into Denny more than anything, and Denny has said that he's going to get Ross back, only to frankly not deliver on that. Finally, he delivered on it, but it feels like an afterthought or something that was unplanned. Maybe that's exactly what Hamlin wants you to think. Maybe that is true. Who knows? Hey, Alan Bailey here. Sorry to take a break from the video, but I wanted to tell you about Dubby. Dubby is an energy drink that was formulated to give you focus and energy with no jitters and no crash. Their formula contains no calories, no sugar, no fillers, no artificial colors, but instead natural vitamins and amino acids to give you long-lasting energy without the crash or the jitters. Right now, you can log on to dubby.gg and order your own, and you can use promo code ALLEN10 at checkout in order to get 10% off your entire order. Check out dubby.gg, use promo code ALLEN10 at checkout. Another interesting penalty this week, Trent Owens, crew chief for Justin Hailey's Colic Racing number 31, has been fined $100,000 and suspended for the next 4 Cup races for a modification on the car's radiator duct. The team and Hailey have also been assessed with the loss of 100 driver and owner points, as well as 10 owner and driver playoff points. The infraction was discovered during pre-qualifying inspection, and after the point adjustment, Justin Hailey is now negative 40 points in the NASCAR Cup Series, meaning that you and I, who have not made a start in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2023, have more points than Justin Hailey, meaning he could have sat out the last 4 races and actually been better off than where he is now. Is this correct? Yes! Just because Justin Hailey's performance did not get him 100 points or more in the first 4 races in 2023 doesn't mean that they didn't do the crime. They need to be punished, and here is your punishment. Negative 40 points, my friend. It falls under the exact same argument that we just had with Rick Hendrick's fines. Does it suck for them? Yes, it is a hole that they will probably spend most of the season climbing out of. But let's keep this debate going and the conversation going in the comments down below. What do you think about the fines issued by NASCAR for Hendrick Motorsports, for Denny Hamlin, and for Justin Hailey's team? Were all 3 fair? Was one a little harsher than the other? Do you necessarily agree with what NASCAR's doing with their single source part modification policy? Or do you think it's absolute garbage and NASCAR has built the worst spec car in the history of professional motorsports and needs to get the next gen out of the Cup Series immediately? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps us out so darn much. And make sure that you share this on your social media accounts if you want to help to grow the channel. It means so much, so thank you. And you can also give me a follow at Hey Alan Bailey and log on to AmericanRacingNetwork.com for the latest on this story. ARN, the Motorsports Authority. Thank you so much for watching. For Shifting Gears, I'm Alan Bailey. We'll see you at the track.